Hey everyone, my name is Gabriel and I'm a black and gray tattooer out of San Diego, California, and this is my YouTube channel. Today I have another very highly requested video which is going to be on how I set up my station and just going over some sanitation principles. So if that sounds interesting to you, go ahead and stay tuned, but for right now let's start off with that intro. Alright guys, so before we get started, I just want to give the disclaimer, this really is intended for tattooers that are already in a shop setting or have been working for a while, just to take a look at some tips or tricks that maybe I do that you don't do or that you might want to try out. So it's not in any way intended to teach anyone how to tattoo, it's not in any way intended to show someone how to do this from scratch. It's really more so just so you guys can pick up some tips and tricks, and also maybe leave some for me in the comments if you see something that I'm not implementing that works really well for you. So besides that, let's go ahead and jump into how I set up my station. Alright guys, so getting started, we're going to start off with a brand new pair of gloves. I know this seems simple, but when you grab your pair of gloves out of your box, try to make sure you're grabbing it by the heel, and that way we just avoid touching the fingertips as much as possible. Obviously make sure that you have your hands nice and washed before you even touch your box of gloves. And also I try to keep my box of gloves on my station, so I'm not moving it with dirty hands throughout the shop or anything like that, or moving it out of the way. The next step we're going to do is we're going to spray down our table, but before that I want to point out that I'm working off a stainless steel cart. I'm a big fan of stainless steel carts just because they're way easier to keep clean. Something like this is a little bit more sturdy and I can move it around wherever I need to, and it just looks a lot more professional. So moving forward, again, I'm gonna go ahead and spray down the table. This bottle that I have on my station is basically just filled with 90% alcohol, and I'll just spray it down. It doesn't matter if it's 90 or 70, it's just what's in it right now. And I'll take some saran wrap. Try to make sure your sheets are a little bit bigger than the station, just so you can overlap it a couple inches. And I'll do the front and the back first. Now on my station that leaves a little gap in the middle, so I try to put it over it, but mostly to the front, just so I double layer the area that I know I'm going to be using the most, which is the front of it. And what I'll do from here is I have a brand new paper towel roll that I have on my station. Everything on this station that I have for my equipment is clean and it's been wiped down with Maticide as soon as it got into the shop, and it doesn't get touched with bare hands. So this brand new paper towel roll, I'm going to go ahead and start off on one side and just squeeze the air out of the station in a way that really sticks that saran wrap to it. And that's the nice thing about working off stainless steel. If you've ever worked off plastic or anything like that when you're traveling, you know that the plastic tends to lift off the station and can be kind of a pain in the butt. So this makes it a lot easier to stick it to it along with the alcohol, and then I'll get all the edges. From there, I'm going to go ahead and put out paper towels. I try to put about 10 or 15 out. I like to have not that many out, just in case for some reason the tattoo doesn't go through today. I don't waste those paper towels. But also, it reminds me to take breaks a little bit more often. So I'll just go ahead and let's just do 5 for right now. But usually I would do about 10 or 15. And I'll set those out on one side. I'm going to set out paper towel and a half. You can do paper towel and a half or 2 paper towels, but let's just do paper towel and a half right now, and this is going to be set aside for my grip. And then the next thing I'm going to do is go ahead and put my ink caps out. So on my equipment station, I have this mason jar that's been wiped down thoroughly with Maticide as soon as I got it, and I put my ink caps in there along with tongue depressors and clip cord sleeves. So I'll go ahead and pull out a clip cord sleeve and set it aside, pull out tongue depressor and set that aside, and then usually I put out 5 ink caps. I guess I'll go ahead and put that out. All 5. Okay, and then I set this aside back on my station. It's important to not have all your bottles and inks and all your equipment onto the station that you're working, just because while we might not see it, there's a lot of cross-contamination that happens even when you dip your machine into your cap and run it. There's a lot of micro spray that just floats around the surface, and it just looks a lot more professional to have a clean surface like this and just have a separate cart for all your equipment, keeping it a lot cleaner, and it's just, safer all around. Once you put your ointment out, you can put a little bit of that ointment on the bottom of these caps, and that helps them stick to the saran wrap just so they don't move around when you're dipping. I'll take a brand new tongue depressor and go ahead and use the ointment of choice that I have, which is Inky's Purple Glide. There's a lot of other good options. This is just the one that I prefer. Well, as soon as I got this Inky's into the shop, same thing. I wipe it down with Maticide just to make sure it stays nice and clean. And again, I don't touch anything on my other station with bare hands. I always try to touch them with gloved hands. And I'll just take out a little bit just so I can show you. And I'll basically press that down on my station, and that just stays there. Now from there, that's basically the entire setup. The only thing I need is a rinse cup, which again is living on my station right there with the rest of my stuff, and I'll put that down. And, you know, I'd put my distilled in. I try to put the distilled water and the inks at the very end, just to be a little bit more efficient and not let the inks dry out when I'm setting up the rest of the station or putting on a stencil or something like that. So from here, I'm gonna go ahead and go over how I set up my machine. There's one that I already have set up. This is my wand packer. I always use the wand packer and the wand shader, but this is an example of one that's already set up so you can see it. And we'll go ahead and set one up together so you can see how I go about doing that. All right, guys, so for starters, this is what the other machine looks like once it's already wrapped up. You can see that there's very little room for any type of contamination, and I can still grab this base and rotate the grip so I can adjust the length of the needle throw. And that's just basically what this looks like when it's all done. So let's go ahead and do this from scratch. So we'll start off by setting up this cup aside just for right now. We won't be needing that. And we have a clip cord sleeve that we'll be using for the base of the machine. I'm gonna go ahead and take my machine, and I'm just gonna go ahead and remove the grip off of it. Now that I got the grip off, I'm basically just gonna set the grip aside. This machine, every single time I finish with a tattoo or, you know, anytime I basically store it, it's wiped down very well, and it's usually handled with glove hands or wiped down after if it's not. We're gonna start off by putting the machine into the sleeve. And I'm gonna go ahead and pinch this area right here and fold it over nice and tight and hold that with my thumb. Next, I'm gonna go ahead and take some tape and I'll press that down, trying to keep as much tension as I can. There we go. And that basically wraps the head of it right there. Next, I'm gonna go ahead and take that grip and place that back onto the machine. And I'll leave just a little bit of space between the machine base and the grip head right there. Now I'll set this aside for a second. The next thing I'm gonna do is put out a piece of saran wrap, and that way we can roll the grip on that. So let's start off with tearing off a piece about 5 to 6 inches in width. And once I have that, the reason I lay the paper towel down here is just so it's not gonna stick to the saran wrap underneath it if I just put it straight down. So I'm gonna take this, fold it in half, and then I'm gonna wrap the top of the grip. I'm gonna leave a little bit of overhang and wrap it over it. Pretty nice and tight. Perfect. Now this is what that looks like. It's overhanging on the top of the grip just a little bit. And I'm gonna go ahead and pinch it. And there's usually one side that's a little bit more clear. You see how thick this is, and this is a little bit thinner. And I'll go ahead and I'll pull that over the side. You can see how tight that is right there. Now from there, there's a lot of excess that I'm not gonna need. So I'm gonna take my scissors and I'm gonna cut that off. Perfect. So now I've wrapped the grip with the saran wrap. It's overlaying a little bit to make sure it's covered. And then I have the actual sleeve just kind of going into the base of the machine right there. So far we're doing pretty good. I'm gonna set that aside for a second. And I'm gonna take these paper towels, and what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna fold them into roughly about 1.5 to 2 inch sections. And I'll just keep folding it until I run out of paper towel. I try to make sure I keep it even just to make it easier to, you know, have a nice tight wrap. And I try to press down every single time I wrap it just to stop it from getting bigger and bigger. And that's usually about what it ends up looking. I have a little bit of extra. I'll just fold that over. Perfect. Now I'll go ahead and take my machine. I'm gonna wrap it right at the grip face of this base right here. And I'm gonna go ahead and start keeping it nice and tight as I wrap it. Try not to go too tight because you might end up tearing the paper towel if it's one of the types of paper towels that has the perforations in it. And just keeping it nice and tight all the way. So now I have this excess, you know, that's just going to be loose until I tape it down. But I want to just squeeze it around right there, making sure that it kind of contours to it, just like that. And then I'll take my tape. Okay. And I'll go ahead and lay the tape down just about 1 inch back from the fold. And I'll go one time all the way across. And as soon as I wrap back over that tape, I'm going to start spiraling upwards, lightening the tension as I get to the top. And then again, do one last loop. When it starts to make contact with the original spiral, I'll leave about 1/2 inch, cut it off, and I'll fold over the tape end back on itself and just press that down. Now what that's going to do is this little excess piece of tape right here, it's going to make it really easy to break down when we're all done. I'll just start by taking that off and unwind it. It's really efficient. So now you can see what this looks like. Now, a lot of this step can be avoided just by using the disposable grips. The only problem that I find with the disposable grips is that they're not as comfortable. So I end up still wrapping them with a paper towel. And it's like at that point, I might as well just not waste plastic. And I just rather use the reusable grip and make sure it stays nice and clean. From there, I have all this extra clipcord sleeve that I'm going to cut off, leaving about an inch at the top, maybe about 1.5 inches. And I'll go ahead and put any of this excess clipcord sleeve just right back into the mason jar that has it, and that way I can continue to reuse this until it's out. Perfect. Okay, so now I have that set. The only thing that I need to do is do a little slit down one of these sides. And what that's going to do is it's going to help the battery go onto it. I'm only going about 1 inch into it, so it's still pretty much at the top of the RCA plug. From there, I'm going to take another paper towel, set that down, maybe even just take 2. And only because I'm going to be laying the saran wrap down. I'll set this machine aside because this is pretty much all done. And I'll grab my battery. Again, the battery is nice and clean. It's been wiped down. I'm going to go ahead and set it down for right now, just over here. I'm going to take another about 5 inches of saran wrap. I'm going to lay it down just the same. And I'll just lay it down on the paper towels to stop it from sticking. Perfect. Now I'll take the battery, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to wrap the battery at the very end of it, making sure that a little bit of that saran wrap comes over that bevel. And that's basically what it looks like. You can see some of it just goes over that edge, and I'm just going to press it down like that. Now what I'll do is I'll find the thinnest side of the saran wrap as I move it around, just like I did with the grip, which is about right here. I'm going to lift it and just move it over. Try not to go too tight because some of these have buttons on the top and on the side, and if you go really tight, it could end up pressing the buttons and just kind of leaving them hard to depress. So I'll fold this over, and again, now I have all this excess that I'm going to go ahead and cut off. Again, these scissors, just like everything else, has been wiped down and it doesn't get touched with bare hands. Okay, now to finish this off, I'm going to go ahead and take some more tape, and I'm going to tape down right over that excess little bit of plastic that we folded over. There we go. And that's it as far as the battery goes. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to slide it right down into that sleeve that we cut open, making sure that we don't bend the sleeve underneath it. And now we have the battery set on top. It's still all covered on the RCA plug, and you can see that I can still grab the grip and move, I can grab the base of the machine and still move the grip to throw my, to adjust my needle throw. The last thing I'm going to do is, some people will just poke a hole here. What I prefer to do is try to at least cut away somewhat of a little bit of a circle in there. So I'll take my scissors, poke a hole, and I'll just start trying to cut a little notch out. And then you can usually just take that with your fingertips. And now I have a little bit of a notch cut out right there. And what that does is when I actually put my cartridge into the machine, if you look pretty closely, you can see that around the bevel of the cartridge, it's still nice and sealed all the way around. This is what this looks like. Again, I can just adjust the needle throw by still freely spinning this, which is why you don't want to go all the way to the top, because then you won't have any machine to grab and adjust the throw. Everything is protected. This might seem like overkill to a lot of you guys, but honestly, like, it's a small step to just making sure that I can keep everything clean. It looks a lot more professional to my clients, and honestly, like, it's just the way that you should be doing stuff. Just trying to keep it as protected and clean as possible. Yeah, the thing about infections and clients, you know, whether they get their infection on their own because they don't take care of it, or they get it from you, like, they're never going to bring it to your attention until it's too late, at least the majority of the time. So doing these little steps lets you know and lets the client know that it's not going to be anything on you if something like that were to happen. I usually have both of these set up. I'll take one of the paper towels that I have out, and I'll just lay it down, and then I'll have my machine set up here, and then I will set my cartridges right there. The paper towel just stops it from moving around. One last little tip I want to say about, you know, the cartridges is that when you're setting up your station, I try not to lay down cartridge packs out here, because we don't know where they've been. We usually grab them with bare hands. So instead is on my other station, I have my cartridges, and when I know that I'm going to be needing them, so I know I'll be using a 7 mag, a 13 mag for almost every tattoo, I take those specific cartridges and I plop them out onto the station without laying them onto the station, just because, again, that wrapping, we don't know where it's been the whole time. You might be noticing that I don't have a green soap bottle on my station that's wrapped up, and the reason is I don't wipe with green soap. I prefer to use distilled water. It causes a lot less irritation for the skin while you're working, and I have really long sessions, so to me, any little bit that I can do to help the skin not being irritated makes a huge difference. So what I'll do instead is I will have my green soap bottle on my station that has the rest of my equipment, and whenever I do need to clean it down, which is once every few breaks, I'll go ahead and take off these gloves, put on some new gloves, and then I'll go ahead and, you know, put a brand new paper towel on my hand, spray it down with the green soap, set the green soap back down, and then I'll go ahead and wipe the tattoo, obviously with new gloves. That's it, guys. As far as the station goes and as far as my machine goes, this is pretty much the setup that I have. As far as breaking it down, I'll probably put out another video of that shortly, just so you guys can see, you know, how easy it is to break down. But I'll set these guys a little bit to the side. I'll have my rinse cup right there, fill that with distilled water, and put my inks out, and that's pretty much my whole setup, guys. A couple things I want to go over really quick is pretty straightforward. When I wrap my armrest, for the most part, I'm just spraying it with alcohol the same way, and then just covering it with saran wrap in several layers, and making sure that I overlap the bottom in a way that I'm not going to be grabbing it with dirty hands when I try to move it around. So that's pretty straightforward. And also, when I'm using my massage table, I always have some type of a dental bib on there, one of the full-size sheets. If I'm just going to be doing an inner bicep or something like that, then I'll usually just cut up a section, maybe half of it, just so I'm not wasteful with my equipment. Now, another thing I want to add to this, a lot of the sanitation principles don't start at the setup. They start off way before, making sure that all your equipment is wiped down when you get it, making sure you're not cross-contaminating it by touching it with dirty hands and then forgetting to wipe it down or just not intending to wipe it at all. Little things like that make a huge difference. Obviously, washing your hands is a huge step towards things, but making sure that you don't wash your hands and then touch your face or touch other things around the shop. I know it might seem a little bit, you know, ridiculous to be this extreme about it, but I don't think it's extreme at all. You know, I think this is what we do, and I think we should be very safe in the way that we handle our equipment and just the way that we handle our clients too. One more thing is I want to make sure that we're all shaving down whatever surface we're working on. The last thing we want to do is get an ingrown hair that turns into an infection just because we were too lazy to spend a 25-cent razor on someone. Besides that, if you have any questions, again, leave it in the comments. If you like this video or you gained anything from it that was positive, please hit that thumbs up button. It makes a huge difference to me and lets me know that I'm doing a good job. If you want to keep up to date with the content that I have coming up, make sure you subscribe and hit that little bell icon. I do have live interviews coming up soon where I'm going to need you guys to interact. So if you guys want the first notification when that happens, I suggest hitting that little bell icon. Besides that, thank you guys so much for your time. I appreciate it, and I look forward to putting out another video soon. Have a great day.